The message crystal glowed red on Keeper Velthari's desk. He stared at it with his large yellow eyes and felt his stomach drop. Red crystals meant trouble. They meant assignments nobody wanted. Velthari was tall and thin with green, scaly skin that changed color when he was upset. Right now, small patches were turning orange around his neck. He had been working at the Galactic Zoological Preserve for 30 years. In all that time, he had never received a red crystal message. He touched the crystal with one clawed finger. A hologram appeared above his desk, showing Director Quan Thul. The director's 4 arms moved as he spoke. Keeper Velthari, you have been chosen for a special assignment. The new human habitat on Station Kepler 7 needs an experienced keeper. You will leave tomorrow. Velthari's neck scales turned bright orange. Director, surely there are other keepers who would be better suited for this assignment. I have no experience with humans. That is exactly why you were chosen, the director replied. Humans are unpredictable. They cause problems. They make unreasonable demands. We need someone who will not give in to their strange requests. You are our most practical keeper. You follow the rules. The hologram flickered and disappeared. Velthari sat back in his chair and groaned. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were loud. They were emotional. They formed attachments to the strangest things. Other species had tried to study them for years, but humans never made sense. The next morning, Velthari packed his belongings and boarded the transport ship to Station Kepler 7. During the 3-day journey, he read everything he could find about humans. The reports were not encouraging. Humans lived on a planet called Earth, with thousands of different animals. For some reason, they had brought many of these animals with them when they joined the galactic community. Most species left their primitive, animal companions behind when they developed space travel, but not humans. The report said humans were dangerous when separated from their home environment. They became depressed and stopped eating. Some had even died from something called homesickness. It made no sense to Velthari. How could missing a place make someone sick? When the transport arrived at Station Kepler 7, Velthari went straight to the human habitat. What he saw made his scales turn orange again. The habitat was a simple, transparent dome in the center of the station's recreational area. Inside, there were basic furniture, artificial lighting, and a food dispenser. It looked exactly like every other species' habitat in the preserve system. But something was wrong. Very wrong. 3 humans sat inside the dome, and they looked terrible. One was a male with dark hair who kept staring at the walls. Another was a female who had not touched her food. The third was a younger male who was lying on a bench looking at the ceiling. Velthari checked his datapad. The humans had been in the habitat for 2 weeks. In that time, visitor numbers had dropped by 60%. People came to see the habitat once, looked for a few minutes, and left. Some visitors had complained that the humans were boring. "This is Dr. Kim Hyunwoo," said Station Administrator Lux Vera as she approached Velthari. She was a tall, blue-skinned woman with silver hair. "He is the human habitat coordinator." Velthari looked at the man through the transparent wall. Hyunwoo was thin and pale. His clothes hung loose on his body. "He looks sick," Velthari said. "They all do," Luxavera replied. "We have tried everything. Better food, more entertainment programs, even holographic projections of their home planet. Nothing works. The humans just sit there and get weaker." "Have you asked them what they need?" "Of course. But their requests are impossible. They want real soil. They want specific plants from their planet. And strangest of all, they want to bring animals into the habitat." Luxavera shook her head. "Animals in a sapient species exhibit. It makes no sense," Velthari nodded. This was exactly the kind of unreasonable behavior the director had warned him about. "I will speak with Dr. Hyunwoo and explain the rules." He entered the habitat through the airlock. The air inside smelled stale and artificial. The 3 humans, looked up at him with tired eyes. "I am Keeper Velthari," he said in basic galactic standard. "I am here to manage your habitat." Hyunwoo stood up slowly. "Thank you for coming. We have been waiting to speak with someone in charge. Our current situation is not sustainable. We need to make changes." "I have read your requests," Velthari said. His scales were staying green, which was good. "They are not possible. This habitat meets all galactic standards for sapient species accommodation. You have clean air, nutritious food, and entertainment systems." "But we are dying," said the female human. Her name was Park So-young according to Velthari's datapad. "Not quickly, but slowly. Each day we get weaker." "You are being dramatic," Velthari replied. "Your vital signs show you are healthy." The younger male, Lee Dong-ho, sat up on his bench. "Sir, with respect, our species did not evolve alone. We lived with other creatures for millions of years. We need that connection. It is part of who we are." Velthari's scales flickered orange for just a moment. "Other species have adapted to modern life. The Velnari left our tree-climbing habits behind when we developed technology. The crystalline collective abandoned their need for mineral baths. Evolution means moving forward, not clinging to primitive behaviors." "This is different," Hyunwoo said. "We are not talking about habits or preferences. We are talking about survival. Humans and animals evolved together. We understand each other. We help each other. Without that connection, we become incomplete." "Incomplete?" Velthari could not hide his confusion. "You are sapient beings. How can non-sapient animals complete you?" So-young smiled sadly. "On Earth, I worked with animals every day. I could calm an angry dog with just my voice. I could tell when a cat was sick before any medical scanner. Animals trusted me, and I understood them. Here, I feel like I am missing half of myself." "My grandfather had a horse," Dong-ho added. "They worked together on a farm for 20 years. When the horse died, my grandfather said it was like losing his best friend. That horse never spoke a word, but they communicated perfectly." Velthari felt a headache starting behind his eyes. This was exactly the kind of irrational thinking that made humans so difficult to manage. Animals are animals. They respond to food and basic stimuli. They do not have real relationships with sapient species. "Then you do not understand humans at all," Hyunwoo said quietly. Outside the habitat, more visitors walked by. A few stopped to look at the humans, but most just kept walking. Velthari could see the disappointment on their faces. The human. Habitat was supposed to be one of the preserve's main attractions, but instead it was becoming an embarrassment. "I will consider your requests," Velthari said finally, "but do not expect miracles. The preserve has rules for good reasons." As he left the habitat, Velthari felt troubled. The humans seemed sincere, but their ideas went against everything he had learned about proper species management. Animals were not companions. They were biological machines that followed programming. The idea that sapient beings needed them for emotional or psychological health was ridiculous. But as he walked away, he could not shake the image of 3 dying. Humans sitting in a perfect habitat that met every galactic standard for their species. Maybe the problem was not with the habitat. Maybe the problem was with the standards themselves. Velthari spent 3 days thinking about the humans. Every morning he checked their habitat and saw them getting weaker. Hyunwoo had stopped eating his breakfast. So-young just sat by the window staring at nothing. Dong-ho slept most of the day. The visitor numbers kept dropping. Yesterday, only 12 people came to see the human habitat. Last month, before Velthari arrived, the numbers were over 200 per day. Director Kwanthul would not be happy about this. On the 4th day, Velthari made a decision he never thought he would make. He sent a message to the Galactic Animal Transport Division. If bringing animals would help the humans, then maybe it was worth trying. but he would do it his way with proper rules and controls. "I need a small shipment of Earth animals for the human habitat," he told the transport coordinator. "Nothing dangerous, nothing that requires special care, just basic creatures that will not cause problems." The coordinator was surprised. "Earth animals for a sapient species exhibit? Are you sure about this, Keeper Velthari?" "Just send them," Velthari said, and ended the call. Two other keepers worked on Station Kepler 7. Zixandra managed the Cetacean Intelligence exhibit. She was a tall, crystalline being who looked like living glass. Her people communicated through light patterns that flashed across their transparent bodies. Morgul ran the Hive Mind Collective display. He was short and round, with gray skin and large black eyes. His species shared thoughts through bioelectric connections. They could not understand why other species lived as individuals. Both keepers found Velthari in the station cafe the next morning. His scales were bright orange, which meant he was stressed. "We heard you ordered animals for the humans," Zixandra said. Light patterns danced across her crystal form as she spoke. "This is very unusual." "The humans are dying," Velthari replied. "Nothing else has worked. Maybe animals will help." Morgul's large eyes blinked slowly. "My collective consciousness cannot understand this need for animal companionship. Animals are not sapient. They cannot share thoughts or complex emotions. What purpose do they serve?" "I do not know," Velthari admitted. "But I am willing to try anything to save this exhibit. The visitor numbers are terrible. If this fails, they will close the human habitat completely." "And then what happens to the humans?" Zixandra asked. Velthari did not want to think about that. Species that could not adapt to preserve life were usually sent back to their home planets. But Earth was very far away, and the humans had said they were researchers who needed to stay in this part of the galaxy. The animal shipment arrived 2 days later. Velthari watched as the transport crew unloaded the containers. There were 6 dogs of different sizes and colors, 4 cats with various fur patterns, a cage of small birds, 2 rabbits, even some tiny creatures called hamsters. All the animals looked healthy, but they seemed confused and scared. They had been traveling for weeks in the transport ship. The dogs whined softly, the cats hid in the corners of their carriers, the birds fluttered nervously. Velthari felt doubt creeping into his mind. These creatures looked so small and helpless. How could they possibly help the humans? He had the animals taken to a quarantine area near the human habitat. All new species had to be checked for diseases before they could be introduced to a preserve exhibit. The medical staff would need 3 days to complete their tests. When Velthari told the humans about the animals, their reaction surprised him. For the first time since he had arrived, they showed real energy. "You brought them," Hyunwoo said, standing up quickly. "You actually brought them." "They are in quarantine," Velthari warned. "They may not pass the medical tests, and even if they do, there will be strict rules about how you interact with them." But the humans were not listening to his warnings. "So?" Young pressed her face against the habitat wall, trying to see toward the quarantine area. "What kinds of animals did you bring?" "Dogs, cats, birds, and some small mammals," Velthari said. "Nothing exotic or dangerous." Dongho smiled for the first time since Velthari had met him. "Dogs and cats, oh, this is wonderful. Thank you, Keeper Velthari. Thank you so much." Velthari's scales flickered between orange and green. He was not used to such emotional responses. "Do not thank me yet. We do not know if this will work." Over the next 3 days, something strange happened. Even though the animals were still in quarantine, the humans began to improve. They ate their meals completely. They talked to each other more. They even started asking questions about the station and the other exhibits. "It is just knowing the animals are here," So Young explained when Velthari asked about the change. "We can feel hope again." This made no sense to Velthari. The humans could not see the animals or touch them. They were not even sure the animals would pass the medical tests. How could just knowing about them make such a difference? On the third day, the medical staff cleared the animals for introduction to the exhibit. Velthari watched as the transport crew moved the animal enclosures into the human habitat. He had ordered special areas built for each type of animal, with proper barriers and containment systems. But when the animals were released, something unexpected happened. The dogs did not stay in their designated area. Instead, they ran straight to the humans. The largest dog, with brown and black fur, went directly to Hyun-woo and sat at his feet. Its tail was wagging. The cats scattered in different directions, but within minutes they had found comfortable spots near the humans. One gray cat jumped onto So-young's lap and began making a strange rumbling sound. "That is called purring," So-young said when she saw Velthari's confused expression. "It means the cat is happy and comfortable." The birds settled on perches near Dong-ho, chirping softly. The rabbits hopped around exploring but stayed close to the humans. Even the tiny hamsters seemed more active and alert. Velthari stared in amazement. He had expected the animals to be afraid of the humans. In his experience, animals were always nervous around unfamiliar species. But these creatures acted like they had known the humans their entire lives. "How do they know you?" he asked. "They do not know us specifically," Hyun-woo explained, gently petting the dog's head. "But they recognize us as humans. Animals can sense things about people. They can tell if someone is safe or dangerous, calm or upset." "That is impossible," Velthari said. "Animals respond to food and basic survival instincts. They cannot read emotional states." So-young looked up from the purring cat. "Watch this," she said softly. She made a small clicking sound with her tongue. All 4 cats turned to look at her immediately. She clicked again and one of the cats came running over. "How did you do that?" Velthari asked. "Cats respond to certain sounds," So-young explained. "It is not magic. It is communication that developed over thousands of years of living together." Dong-ho whistled a low tune. The birds stopped chirping and tilted their heads to listen. When he finished, they began chirping again, but in a different pattern. "They are trying to copy the melody," Dong-ho said. "Birds are very smart. They can learn songs and even simple words." Velthari felt his scientific worldview shifting. Everything he had been taught said that animals were simple creatures that followed basic programming. But what he was seeing suggested something much more complex. The most shocking thing was how the humans looked. In just 1 hour with the animals, they had transformed completely. Their skin had more color. Their eyes were bright and alert. They moved with energy and purpose. Outside the habitat, visitors had begun to gather. Word was spreading through the station that something interesting was happening in the human habitat. People pointed and talked as they watched the humans and animals interact. "I have never seen anything like this," Zixandra said, appearing beside Velthari. Light patterns of confusion flickered across her crystal body. "Neither have I," Velthari admitted. His scales were turning yellow, which meant he was deeply thoughtful. For the first time since arriving at Station Kepler 7, Velthari began to wonder if he had been wrong about humans. And if he had been wrong about humans, what else might he be wrong about? 3 weeks passed peacefully at Station Kepler 7. The human habitat had become the most popular exhibit on the preserve. Visitors came from across the galaxy to watch the strange bond between humans and animals. Velthari still did not understand it, but he could not argue with the results. The humans were healthy and happy. The animals seemed content. Most importantly, the visitor numbers had increased by 400%. Director Kwan Thul had sent 3 congratulation messages. Then, everything went wrong. It started at 800 hours on a Tuesday morning. Velthari was having breakfast in the station cafe when the lights flickered. A moment later, all the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. The station's computer voice echoed through the corridors. "System failure detected. Main power grid offline. Life support switching to backup systems." Velthari ran toward the control center. Other staff members were running in the same direction. The corridors were full of confused aliens trying to understand what was happening. In the control center, chaos ruled. Technicians shouted at each other in different languages. Warning lights flashed red and yellow. The main computer screen showed error messages in 12 different alien scripts. "What is the situation?" Velthari asked Station Administrator Luxavera. "Complete system failure," she replied, her silver hair floating around her head in panic. "The main computer network crashed. Life support is on backup power, but it will only last 6 hours. Emergency protocols are not responding. What about the exhibits?" "That is the worst part. Several animal enclosures were damaged when the power went out. The containment fields failed. We have dangerous creatures loose in the station." Velthari felt his scales turn bright orange. "Which animals escaped?" "Not from your habitat," Luxavera said quickly. "The Earth animals are safe. But we have predators from the dangerous species wing. 2 Arcturus tigers, several venomous snakes, and a pack of Centauri wolves. The Arcturus tigers were as big as Earth lions, but twice as fast. The Centauri wolves hunted in groups and could smell fear from kilometers away. Even the station's security team would have trouble catching them, under normal conditions." "Where is the security team now?" Velthari asked. "Trying to restore power to the containment systems. But without the main computer, they are working manually. It could take hours." Another technician called out from across the room. "We have injured personnel in Section C. The medical team cannot reach them because of a gas leak in the corridor." Velthari made a decision. "I am going to check on my exhibits. If the power situation gets worse, the habitat life support might fail." He ran through the corridors toward the preserve section. The red emergency lighting made everything look scary and strange. He could hear animal sounds in the distance, roars, howls, and other noises that should not be in the corridors. When he reached the human habitat, he found something amazing. The humans were not panicking. Instead, they were working together, with their animals in ways Velthari had never seen before. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the habitat making quiet whistling sounds. All 6 dogs sat around him in a circle, completely calm and alert. "Dr. Hyunwoo," Velthari called through the communication system. "Are you safe? There are dangerous animals loose in the station." "We know," Hyunwoo replied. "We can hear them, but we are ready to help." "Help? How can you help? You are locked in your habitat." So Young looked up from where she was sitting with the cats. "Keeper Velthari, these animals can do things your security systems cannot do. Dogs can track by smell. Cats can see in the dark. Birds can scout areas from above." "That is impossible. The loose animals are predators. They would attack your creatures immediately." Dongho shook his head. "Not if we guide them properly. Animals understand each other better than computers understand anything." Before Velthari could argue, his communication device buzzed. "Keeper Velthari, we need you in Section D immediately. One of our staff is trapped under debris, but we cannot locate him in the dark." Velthari looked at the humans. They were watching him with hopeful expressions. "Let us help," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Open the habitat." Every rule in Velthari's training told him this was wrong. You never released exhibit specimens during an emergency. You never put untrained civilians in danger. But looking at the calm, confident faces of the humans, he made another decision that surprised himself. He opened the habitat door. The humans and their animals moved like they had practiced for this moment their entire lives. Hyunwoo whistled softly, and the biggest dog ran ahead into the corridor. It came back 30 seconds later and barked twice. "The corridor is clear," Hyunwoo said, somehow understanding the dog's message. They moved through the station in formation. The dogs ran ahead, checking each area and reporting back with different bark patterns. The cats moved silently along the walls, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The birds flew above them, watching for dangers from overhead. Velthari followed, behind, amazed by what he was seeing. The animals were not acting on instinct alone. They were following complex commands and communicating information back to the humans in ways that seemed impossible. They reached Section D, where a Velnari technician was trapped under a fallen beam. The station's emergency teams had been unable to find him because their location sensors were not working. But Hyunwoo's dog walked directly to the debris pile and began digging. Within minutes, they had located the injured technician. "How did the dog know where to look?" Velthari asked. "Scent," So-Young explained as she helped move the debris. "Dogs can smell individual people from very far away. Your technician's scent was strongest right here." As they worked to free the trapped alien, Dong-Ho's birds flew back with urgent chirping sounds. "Trouble coming," Dong-Ho said immediately. "The birds say there are big predators heading this way." "Arcturus tigers," Velthari said, checking his scanner. "2 of them moving down the main corridor." "Can your security team stop them?" "Not without power for the containment weapons." Hyunwoo looked at his animals, then at Velthari. "We can. Try to lead them away, but we will need your help. That is too dangerous. More dangerous than letting them find injured people who cannot move?" Velthari realized Hyunwoo was right. The tigers would eventually find the trapped technician and anyone else who could not run. "What do you need me to do?" So-Young's gray cat suddenly arched its back and hissed. All the other animals became alert. "They are here," Hyunwoo whispered. 2 massive shapes appeared at the end of the corridor. The Arcturus tigers were even more frightening in the red emergency lighting. Their eyes glowed like yellow fire, and their muscles rippled under striped fur. But something strange happened. Instead of attacking immediately, the tigers stopped and tilted their heads. They were listening to a sound Velthari could barely hear. Dong-Ho was making soft clicking noises with his tongue. The dogs were whining quietly. The cats were making low rumbling sounds. "What are you doing?" Velthari whispered. "Talking to them," Hyunwoo replied softly. "All animals speak the same basic language. Fear, curiosity, hunger, safety. We are telling them we are not a threat." The tigers took another step forward, but they moved more slowly now. Their ears were forward instead of back. Their tails were not lashing. "It is working," So-Young breathed. One of the tigers made a sound that was almost like a question. Hyunwoo responded with a gentle rumbling sound from deep in his throat. "You are communicating with them," Velthari said in amazement. "Basic communication," Hyunwoo corrected. "Nothing complex, just letting them know we understand they are, scared and confused too." The tigers stood in the corridor for several more minutes. Then, as if making a decision, they turned and walked away. "They are going back toward their original enclosure," Dong-Ho said, somehow knowing this from his birds' reports. "The familiar smells will comfort them." Velthari could only stare as the humans and animals worked together to safely evacuate the injured technician. In 30 minutes, they had accomplished what the station's security team had been unable to do in 3 hours. As they carried the rescued alien toward the medical center, Velthari realized that everything he thought he knew about animals and communication was wrong. The humans had not just saved someone's life. They had shown him a completely new way of understanding the world. The station's power was restored 6 hours later. The escaped animals were safely returned to their enclosures. The injured technician was recovering in the medical bay. But Velthari could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. He found himself watching the human habitat more carefully than ever before. Instead of just checking that the humans were healthy and the exhibit was clean, he began studying their behavior with the animals. The next morning, he saw So-Young working with a young cat that seemed sick. The cat was not eating and moved very slowly. So-Young did not use any medical equipment. Instead, she sat quietly next to the cat and made soft sounds. "What are you doing?" Velthari asked through the communication system. "Listening." So-Young replied. "This cat is trying to tell me where it hurts." Cats cannot talk, not with words, but they communicate in other ways. The way this cat moves tells me its stomach hurts. The sound it makes tells me it feels scared. The way it looks at me tells me it wants help, but does not trust easily. Velthari activated his medical scanner and pointed it at the cat. The readings showed a minor digestive problem that would heal in a few days with proper medicine. "The scanner shows a simple stomach illness," he said. "How did you know that without technology?" "So?" Young gently stroked the cat's head. "I watched how it walked. Cats with stomach pain move differently than cats with leg injuries or head problems. I listened to the sounds it made. A scared sound is different from a pain sound, and I felt how tense its muscles were when I touched it. That seems like very difficult information to gather, only if you have never learned how to do it. For humans who grew up with animals, reading these signs is as natural as reading words on a page." Velthari made notes in his data pad. This was the first time anyone had explained the process in a way that sounded almost scientific. Later that day, he watched Hyunwoo training the dogs, but it was not training like Velthari understood training. There were no food rewards or punishment systems. Instead, Hyunwoo seemed to be having conversations with the animals. "Sit," Hyunwoo said to the largest dog. The dog sat immediately. "Stay," Hyunwoo said, walking away. The dog remained sitting even when Hyunwoo moved out of sight. "Come," Hyunwoo called from across the habitat. The dog ran to him immediately. "How does the dog understand these words?" Velthari asked. "Dogs are very smart," Hyunwoo explained. "They can learn hundreds of words and commands, but more importantly, they want to work with humans. It makes them happy to understand what we need." "Want?" Velthari's scales flickered. "Animals do not have wants. They have instincts and responses to stimuli." Hyunwoo looked at him with surprise. "Have you never had a pet, Keeper Velthari?" "Pet." "An animal companion, a creature that lives with you and shares your life." "The Velnari do not keep animals," Velthari said. "We consider it primitive to form attachments to non-sapient species." "Then you have missed one of the greatest joys in the universe," Hyunwoo said sadly. That evening, Velthari met with Zixandra and Morgul in the station's observation lounge. Both alien keepers had been watching the humans too, and they had questions. "The light patterns I observed during the emergency were unlike anything in our databases," Zixandra said. "The humans and animals seem to share information without any technological interface. How is this possible?" "My collective consciousness cannot process individual emotional connections," Morgul added. "But the humans appear to form unique bonds with each separate animal. They treat each creature as a distinct individual rather than as part of a group. This suggests a level of mental complexity we had not expected." Velthari looked out the observation window at the stars. "I think we have been making a mistake about Earth animals. We assumed they were simple because they are not sapient. But maybe intelligence and communication exist in more forms than we understood." "Are you suggesting that animals have intelligence?" Zixandra's crystal body flashed with skeptical patterns. "I am suggesting that humans have developed a form of communication that works with animal intelligence, whatever level that might be. During the emergency, I saw dogs making decisions based on information from humans. I saw cats choosing to help instead of hide. I saw birds working as scouts and messengers. But how does this communication work without technology?" Morgul asked. Velthari had been thinking about this question all day. What if the technology is biological instead of mechanical? What if millions of years of evolution created natural communication systems that we abandoned when we developed artificial systems? The next day, Velthari asked the humans to demonstrate their abilities more systematically. He wanted to understand the limits and rules of human-animal communication. "Can you communicate with any animal?" he asked Hyunwoo. Some better than others, Hyunwoo admitted. Dogs and humans have lived together for thousands of years, so we understand each other very well. Cats are more independent, but they can form strong bonds, too. Birds are intelligent, but think very differently from mammals. Horses and humans have worked together for centuries. What about animals that are not from Earth? That is harder. Each species has its own communication patterns, but fear, curiosity, and aggression seem to be universal. Most animals understand when someone means no harm. So Young added, the key is patience and respect. You cannot force an animal to trust you. You have to earn it by showing that you understand their needs and will not hurt them. Velthari thought about the escaped tigers. The humans had not controlled or dominated them. Instead, they had somehow convinced the tigers that they were not threats. During the emergency, how did you know the tigers would not attack? We did not know, Dong-ho said honestly. But we could see they were scared and confused, not hunting. A hunting tiger moves differently than a lost tiger. We took a chance that they would respond to calm, non-threatening behavior. That was very dangerous. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed. But sometimes taking risks is necessary to save lives. The tigers were not evil creatures. They were just animals who had been frightened by the power failure and wanted to find safety. This idea shocked Velthari. In Velnari culture, dangerous animals were always seen as threats to be controlled or eliminated. The concept that they might just be frightened and seeking safety was completely new to him. How do you know what an animal is feeling? Practice, So Young said. And paying attention. Every species has body language, ears, tails, the way they hold their heads, how they breathe. After years of working with animals, reading these signs becomes automatic. But this is not telepathy or technology? No. It is observation and experience, like learning to read facial expressions in your own species, but extended to other species. Velthari felt his worldview shifting again. Maybe humans were not primitive for maintaining connections with animals. Maybe other species had lost something important when they decided that only sapient communication mattered. That night, Velthari wrote a long report to Director Kwanthul. For the first time in his career, he recommended that the preserve system study human techniques and possibly apply them to other exhibits. He ended his report with a question that surprised even himself. What if the humans are not just good at managing animals? What if they understand something about life and intelligence that the rest of us have forgotten? As he sent the message, Velthari looked toward the human habitat. Through the transparent wall, he could see Hyunwoo sitting quietly with one of the dogs. They were not doing anything special, just sharing the same space peacefully. For some reason, watching them made Velthari feel something he had no word for. It was not scientific curiosity or professional interest. It was something warmer and more personal. Maybe, he thought, this was what the humans called friendship. 2 weeks after Velthari sent his report, Director Kwanthul arrived at Station Kepler 7 with an inspection team. The group included Supreme Curator Thex Mori, the highest-ranking official in the Galactic Preserve System, and Research Director Quinvala, who studied animal behavior across the galaxy. Velthari met them at the transport dock. His scales were bright orange with nervousness. These were the most important people in his field, and they were here because of his unusual report. Keeper Velthari, Director Kwanthul said as he stepped off the transport. Your report about human abilities was very interesting. We have come to see these phenomena for ourselves. Supreme Curator Thex Mori was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and long, flowing robes. She moved like liquid metal and spoke in a voice that sounded like music. We understand that humans can communicate with animals without technology. This challenges everything we know about interspecies interaction. Research Director Quinvala was shorter and rounder, with thick gray fur and large, curious eyes. His species were known for their scientific minds. I have studied animal behavior for 40 years, he said. I have never seen evidence of cross-species communication without technological assistance. Velthari led them toward the human habitat. I must warn you, the things you will see may seem impossible at first. I did not believe them myself until I witnessed them personally. As they approached the habitat, they could see crowds of visitors, watching the exhibit. The human habitat had become so popular that the station had to limit the number of people who could view it at one time. The visitor numbers are impressive, Thexmori noted. What makes this exhibit so popular? See for yourself, Velthari said. Through the transparent walls, they could see the humans and animals working together on various activities. Hyunwoo was teaching the dogs to navigate an obstacle course. So-young was helping injured birds recover their flight abilities. Dong-ho was playing with the cats using simple toys. But what amazed the officials was how the animals responded to the humans. The dogs followed complex commands without hesitation. The cats came when called and performed simple tricks. The birds landed on human hands and shoulders as if they had been friends their entire lives. This is remarkable, Quinvala said. The animals show no fear or stress responses. They appear to genuinely enjoy interacting with the humans. How is this possible without conditioning or training implants? Thexmori asked. Velthari had prepared for this question. The humans say it is based on millions of years of evolution together. Their species developed alongside these animals, learning to communicate through natural methods. Natural methods? Body language, vocal sounds, emotional projection. Things that do not require technology but still carry complex information. Director, Quanthul looked skeptical. Keeper Velthari, you are describing abilities that sound almost telepathic. Our scientists have never documented such capabilities in any species. Before Velthari could respond, an alarm started sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights began flashing, and the computer voice announced, Medical emergency in Research Lab 7. All available personnel respond immediately. The officials looked toward Velthari. What kind of emergency? Let me check, Velthari said, contacting the control center. After a brief conversation, his scales turned pale green. One of our young researchers fell into a restricted area with dangerous plants. The rescue team cannot reach her because of toxic gas in the area. How serious is this? Thexmori asked. Very serious. The plants produce poisonous spores. Without rescue within 30 minutes, the exposure could be fatal. Quinvala checked his data pad. The rescue team's environmental suits are not designed for that type of toxin. They would need special equipment that could take hours to prepare. Velthari looked at the human habitat. Inside, the humans had heard the alarm and were watching with concerned expressions. Keeper Velthari, Hyunwoo called through the communication system. Is someone in trouble? A researcher is trapped in a toxic environment. Our rescue team cannot reach her safely. We might be able to help, So-young said. Animals can navigate dangerous areas better than people with equipment. Absolutely not, Director Quanthul said immediately. We cannot risk civilian lives. But if someone will die without help, Hyunwoo said quietly, should we not try everything possible? Supreme Curator Thexmori studied the humans thoughtfully. What exactly are you proposing? Birds can fly through toxic gas without breathing it in the same way mammals do, Dong-ho explained. They can scout the area and locate the researcher. Dogs can track scents even through chemical contamination. Together, they might be able to guide a rescue from a safe distance. Research Director Quinvala shook his head. This is too dangerous and too uncertain. At that moment, another message came through the communication system. The researchers' vital signs are dropping. We estimate 15 minutes before permanent damage occurs. Velthari made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Open the habitat. Keeper Velthari, Director Quanthul said sharply. You cannot release exhibit specimens during an emergency. Sir, with respect, We are about to lose someone's life because our technology cannot solve this problem. If there is any chance the humans can help, we have to try. Thexmori held up one elegant hand. Wait! I want to see what they can do. The habitat door opened, and the humans emerged with their animals. But instead of chaos, there was immediate organization. Hyunwoo spoke quietly with the dogs. So Young selected 2 of the smartest birds, and Dong-ho picked up a small device that could transmit location signals. We will need someone to guide us to the area, Hyunwoo said, and we will need communication equipment so we can report what we find. Velthari provided both. The group moved through the station corridors with the same coordination they had shown during the power failure. The officials followed at a distance, watching everything carefully. When they reached Research Lab 7, they could see the problem immediately. The trapped researcher was visible through a transparent wall, but the room was filled with yellow-green gas from the damaged plant specimens. The ventilation system cannot clear the toxins fast enough, the rescue team leader explained. Our suits would be compromised within minutes, so Young released her 2 birds. They flew into the toxic area without hesitation, circling above the unconscious researcher and then returning to land on So Young's shoulders. She is alive but not moving, So Young said, somehow understanding the bird's report. She is near the far wall under some fallen equipment. Hyunwoo sent one of the dogs to the edge of the contaminated area. The dog sniffed carefully, then ran back with specific barking patterns. There is a safe path along the left wall, Hyunwoo translated. The toxic concentration is lower there because of air currents. Using the information from the animals, the rescue team was able to enter the area with minimal exposure. They found the researcher exactly where the birds had indicated and extracted her safely. As the medical team worked to treat the rescued researcher, the officials stood in stunned silence. How did they know? Quinvala finally asked. How did the birds understand what information to gather? How did the dog analyze air currents? They did not understand in the way we understand, Hyunwoo explained. But they could see, smell, and sense things that our equipment missed. We learned to interpret what they were telling us. This represents a completely new form of information. Gathering, Thexmori said slowly. Biological sensors guided by sapient intelligence, but not dependent on technology. Director Kwan Thul looked at Velthari with new respect. Your report did not exaggerate. These abilities are remarkable. There is more, Velthari said. During the previous emergency, they communicated with escaped predators and convinced them to return to their enclosures peacefully. Research Director. Quinvala sat down heavily on a nearby bench. If this is real, it changes everything we know about intelligence and communication. We have been assuming that advanced species must abandon biological connections in favor of technological ones. But what if that assumption was wrong? Thexmori asked. What if the humans represent an alternative path of development that combines both approaches? Later that evening, the officials met with Velthari in the station's conference room. The rescued researcher was recovering well, and the story of the rescue had spread throughout the station. Keeper Velthari, Supreme Curator Thexmori said, we have decided to completely restructure the human habitat program. Instead of treating humans as a simple exhibit, we want to establish a research center to study their abilities. A research center? Yes. We want to learn how human-animal communication works. We want to understand if other species can develop similar abilities, and we want to explore whether these techniques can improve our own animal management practices. Director Kwan Thul added, we are prepared to offer Dr. Hyunwoo the position of Director of Interspecies Communication Studies. Dr. So Young would head our new Department of Biological Intelligence Research. Mr. Dong-ho would manage practical applications. And what about the animals? Velthari asked. They would become research partners rather than exhibits, Research Director Quinvala said. We have never considered animals as partners before. The humans have shown us that this relationship is possible. Velthari felt his scales turning. a warm golden color. It was an emotion he had no name for, but it felt like pride mixed with hope. "There is one more thing," Thexmori said. "We would like you to remain as the liaison between the human researchers and the Galactic Preserve Administration. Your understanding of both perspectives would be invaluable." As the officials left to return to their transport, Velthari walked back to the human habitat. Through the transparent wall, he could see Hyun-woo sitting quietly with one of the dogs while So Young tended to the birds, and Dong-ho played with the cats. They were not performing for visitors or demonstrating abilities. They were simply living in harmony with other creatures in a way that Velthari was finally beginning to understand. For the first time in his life, Velthari wondered what it would be like to have such a relationship with another living being. 6 months later, the former human habitat had become the Galactic Center for Interspecies Communication Studies. The transparent dome had been expanded into a complex of research facilities, training areas, and living spaces where humans and animals worked together as partners. Dr. Kim Hyun-woo stood in his new office, watching through the window as researchers from 12 different species participated in training sessions with Earth animals. What had started as a simple exhibit had grown into something that was changing how the galaxy understood intelligence and communication. Velthari entered the office carrying a data pad filled with the day's reports. His scales had settled into a permanent warm green color that indicated contentment and scientific curiosity. "The morning session results," Velthari said, handing over the data pad. "The crystalline students are making remarkable progress with the cats. They have learned to interpret emotional states through bioelectric patterns." Hyun-woo reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. "Zixandra said her people never realized that other creatures could generate detectable emotional frequencies. They thought only their own species communicated through energy patterns. Dr. So Young's research with the Hive Mind Collective has been equally successful," Velthari continued. "Morgul's people are learning to appreciate individual animal personalities. It is helping them understand why some creatures cannot be managed as groups." Through the window, they could see So Young, working with a group of young collective members. Each was paired with a different cat, learning to recognize the unique characteristics that made each animal an individual rather than just part of a species. "The most surprising development has been with my own people," Velthari admitted. 3. Velnari researchers arrived last week to study what they call primitive communication restoration. They want to learn if we can redevelop the biological connections we abandoned centuries ago. Hyun-woo smiled. "It is not about going backward. It is about combining the best of both approaches. Technology and biology working together instead of one replacing the other." A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry. Dong-ho appeared in the doorway with one of the dogs at his side. The dog was wearing a small vest with communication equipment. "The search and rescue training session is ready to begin," Dong-ho reported. "We have volunteers from 6 different species who want to learn how to work with animals during emergencies." "How is the program developing?" Velthari asked. "Better than we hoped?" "The station's security team has officially adopted 3 dogs as permanent members. The medical staff is training with birds to help locate injured people in difficult areas. Even the engineering department wants to learn how animals can detect system problems before the computers notice them." This was perhaps the most practical result of the research. Animals could sense things that sophisticated technology missed. Dogs could detect gas leaks, electrical problems, and even illness in people. Cats could predict equipment failures through vibration changes. Birds could scout dangerous areas and report conditions. "The Galactic Council has approved funding for 10 more research centers," Hyun-woo said. "Species throughout the galaxy want to learn these techniques." Velthari felt proud of how far they had come. "What about resistance?" "Not everyone accepts that animals can be intelligent partners." "There is still skepticism," Hyun-woo admitted. "Some species consider it undignified to learn from non-sapient creatures, but the practical results are hard to argue with." When animal-assisted teams consistently outperform technology-only teams, attitudes change quickly. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Supreme Curator Thex Mori appeared as a hologram above Hyunwoo's desk. Dr. Hyunwoo, I have exciting news. The Galactic Science Council has voted to establish the Interspecies Communication Protocol as an official field of study. Universities across the galaxy will offer courses based on your research. That is wonderful news, Hyunwoo replied. Will this include practical training with animals? Yes. We are arranging for Earth animals to be transported to educational facilities throughout the galaxy. Your techniques will become part of standard training for preserve keepers, emergency responders, and research scientists. After the communication ended, Velthari looked thoughtful. Dr. Hyunwoo, may I ask you something personal? Of course. When you first arrived and requested animals for the habitat, did you know this would happen? Did you plan to change how the galaxy thinks about intelligence and communication? Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. We knew we needed the animals to survive and be healthy. We understood that our species evolved together and that separation made us incomplete. But we never imagined it would lead to all this. What made the difference? I think it was seeing that other species could learn these connections too. We thought it might be something unique to humans and Earth animals. But when Zixandra started communicating with cats, and when Morgul learned to appreciate individual personalities, we realized these abilities might be universal. Velthari nodded. Perhaps all species have the capacity for these connections, but most of us forgot how to use them when we developed advanced technology. That is exactly what we believe, So-young said as she entered the office. I just finished reviewing data from the first year of research. Every species that has participated has shown some improvement in animal communication. Some learn faster than others, but none have failed completely. She sat down and activated a holographic display showing research results. The most interesting discovery is that emotional intelligence seems to be universal. Fear, curiosity, contentment, and trust appear to be concepts that all animals understand, regardless of their planet of origin. Even the dangerous predators? Velthari asked. Especially the dangerous predators, Dongho said, joining the conversation. Aggressive animals are usually afraid or protecting something important to them. Once you understand what motivates them, communication becomes possible. Velthari remembered the Arcturus tigers from the emergency months ago. I have been thinking about that night when the tigers escaped. You convinced them to leave peacefully, but I still do not understand exactly how. We showed them that we recognized their emotional state and respected their needs, Hyunwoo explained. They were not hunting. They were scared and looking for a safe place. By acknowledging their fear and showing that we were not threats, we gave them permission to find safety without conflict. This is what we are teaching to the other species, So-young added. Communication is not about control or dominance. It is about understanding and cooperation. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. A young Velnari researcher named Keth Mira entered nervously. She was one of the first of Velthari's people to join the program. Keeper Velthari, I wanted to report on my progress with the small mammals, she said. Her scales were flickering, between green and yellow, indicating excitement mixed with uncertainty. How are you doing, Keth Mira? It is different than I expected. Yesterday, one of the rabbits came to me when I was feeling sad about a message from home. It sat next to me and made soft sounds. I think it was trying to comfort me. Velthari's scales brightened. And how did that make you feel? Confused at first, then warm, happy. Like I had made a friend who cared about my emotions even though we cannot speak the same language. That is exactly the feeling humans have described, So-young said gently. You are learning to form emotional connections across species barriers. Keth Mira looked amazed. Is this what humans call friendship? Part of it, Hyunwoo replied. Friendship includes understanding, caring, and wanting to help each other. These feelings can exist between any creatures who take the time to communicate properly. After Kethmira left to continue her training, the four friends sat quietly. In the office. Outside, the sounds of the research center filled the air. Animals and aliens working together, learning from each other, building connections that had never existed before. Dr. Hyunwoo, Velthari said eventually, I have a confession to make. When I first received the assignment to manage your habitat, I thought it would be the worst job of my career. I expected you to be difficult and unreasonable. And now? Now I think it has been the most important work I have ever done. You have not just taught us to communicate with animals, you have taught us to communicate with life itself. We have all learned together, Hyunwoo said. 6 months ago, we were 3 dying humans in a sterile exhibit. Now we are part of a community that includes dozens of species and hundreds of individual animals. This happened because you were willing to listen and change your mind. So Young checked her data pad. Speaking of community, we have a celebration to prepare for. Tomorrow marks the official opening of the 10th Interspecies Communication Center. Centers are now operating in every major sector of the galaxy. The dedication ceremony will include representatives from 47 species, Dongho added, and over 200 animals from 30 different planets. Velthari felt his scales turn golden with pride. When I write my final report to Director A. Quantul, what should I say was most important discovery of this project? The humans looked at each other, then at their friend. Tell him that intelligence comes in me.